Good afternoon. Good evening. This is the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. This is our annual retreat. And so what we'll do is we'll call this to order and we'll let them take over. That will be Carl.
Allie, sorry, I had to check my mouth.
Wait a minute, is this it right here? Did you go here?
I did.
We rolling?
Mhm.
Since a lot of us are new to this committee and we haven't actually spent a whole lot of time together, we thought it would be prudent to have a short little icebreaker since this is our retreat. As a previous environmental educator and camp counselor, my favorite job was cooperation skills, where we always did an icebreaker. And one that I never got to do is the one we're about to do, where we're going to make paper airplanes. So I reached into the recycling bin over here for the city and grabbed enough sheets of paper where we're all going to make a paper airplane. On the blank side, I have no idea what these beautiful blueprints are, but on the blank side, you're going to write one interesting or secretive fact about yourself or the neighborhood in which you're representing. So if you're at large, good luck. I mean, you've got a bigger pool than we do, or it can just be about yourself. So you're going to take this airplane and then you're just going to throw it out there, and then we're randomly going to go pick it up, and you got to guess which fact belongs to which member. Does that sound okay for everybody?
Sure.
Okay, lively bunch here. I'm just going to pass these around. Meredith, I will throw you a paper airplane.
Can you show us how to make a paper airplane? Because it's been a long
No,
time
this
since
is your best attempt. And Dolly, you're gonna get one as well.
What you say, put it on the side, just the,
This side.
Yeah, blank side.
okay.
We get a place here?
Absolutely.
We just did this at our department head retreat.
You did the same thing? Oh, cool.
I don't remember how to make it. So I think I'm gonna cheat and use the one I used.
All right.
One that is the same.
Because none of those same people are here.
I don't know what to write.
Yeah.
I have to write something by myself. I don't really know how I did it.
I mean, it could be one or the other. Doesn't have to be both.
You want to show us how to make a plane?
I think you're gonna nail it. It could be a paper train for all I care, as long as it gets thrown in the air.
Here I am like writing in the purple pen, like.
Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching the purple pen, lady.
Did you?
I'm waiting on you to show me how to make that paper. I'm waiting on him. I'm
All right,
just showing.
so
Oh,
paper
you go ahead.
airplane.
I'm not in a hurry. Go on it right now.
Okay.
You go
What is
right.
my?
Did you intentionally put a staple limit in the paper?
I did.
Did
Oh yeah, I meant to do that on purpose.
I thought maybe you'd help fly the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Aerodynamics.
Uh-oh. You got a paper airplane cut?
That's right. No, a staple cutter, that's cool. Always in junior high school.
See, I know I don't know, so I'm waiting on him to finish so he can show me.
Oh, there you
I'm
go.
not in a hurry.
You're supposed to write a sentence or just one word?
Whatever you want to say about yourself.
2 words.
Give me 2 words, 3 words, if you take you that well.
I'm not gonna lie, I totally.
You're an adventure.
So now how we do it?
All right. So what I do is fold it right down the middle, and then take one corner of that and fold it halfway back. I'm making this up as I go, just so
Okay.
everybody knows. And fold that little triangle down.
Okay.
Flip it over to the same thing on the other side.
Okay.
Did you even fold that? No, I'm sorry. Oh, sweet.
Throw the middle over here?
Yep, throw in the middle of it. So then I take this top half
Okay.
and fold it to meet the bottom half,
Let me see.
so where it's line to line. So it should look like that. That fold.
What about this little piece? Oh, this goes
Yep,
too?
it goes with it.
And so do this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha.
Nailed it.
And do the same thing with the other side?
Same thing on the other side.
Okay, I gotcha.
a nice one.
All right.
And to beat up World War I thing.
Now you go get a stapler and a bunch of tape. Just kidding. Oh!
I'm gonna get
That was
it.
good.
North Asheville with the airplane. West coming in high.
Well, I don't know what mine is, but
Nice. You should never take lessons from me on paper airplanes.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
That was a good one.
I think you won. All right. Dawa, you're closest. You want to go first? Yeah, you pick first.
I feel like I should spin around or something.
Yeah, exactly.
no, don't spin around, you might get dizzy.
Okay. So we all just pick one.
Yep.
Oh, and then I gotta go.
Oh, we can all get up and go. That's fine.
We might get our own.
Yeah, no boxing out, no elbows. No
Okay.
fighting. Somebody put a tail
One
on
left
it.
over here.
Got one?
I said,
All right, Dawa.
Oh, Walker, okay, all right, so the sentence is the last African neighborhood left in Asheville, and I'm supposed to guess who this goes with, right?
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I'm fine.
Sorry, because of the mask, I'm
All
sorry.
right, so the last African neighborhood left in Asheville.
The last, what?
African neighborhood left in Asheville. So, right, this is, so the assignment was something about your neighborhood.
Either you or your neighborhood.
All right, so I'm gonna guess that maybe this belongs to Miss Babette and Charlotte.
Nice.
Going this way. Halloween is my favorite holiday, and that's really easy for me because it's Christmas.
Ah.
I already knew that. We were together.
Well, happy holidays.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the best concerts I've ever attended was Tina Turner at an outside amphitheater. This is hard. Tina Turner is my mom's favorite, and she has also seen Tina Turner at an amphitheater. I don't know if that's going to help me at all in guessing. I'm actually trying to tell from your faces.
I wish it was me.
I wish it. I know. Elise? No. Wendy? No. Sharon? Carl?
No.
Down?
Wow.
That's what it is.
Wow.
I know something new about you.
It was a big city, it was 90s in Raleigh, Walnut Creek, and it was just,
I'm on the creek. What year was that?
it was in the 90s.
Mm.
Like,
I feel like it was like
It was a great
99
show.
when my mom saw her. 90, or maybe, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was a fair one.
Organized and understanding, finding ways to help. I have no clue.
Organizing and what?
Organized and understanding, finding ways to help. Someone that sounds like you
No.
or Wendy. That's where I.
Wendy.
Yes, I would like Wendy. I have played in 3 bands, all in Nashville. Oh my God, I've only played in 1 bar with all 3.
Yeah. That's good. Only I just knew the bar owner. I got really lucky. All the bands were horrible,
Oh, were they?
but we had a really good time.
Yeah, that's right. What year was that?
A lot of them.
A lot of
Bad years.
A lot of bad years, but at
years.
least you remember.
I remember them,
Yeah.
most of them. No, I'm just kidding. All right, we got. Nice. Sang in a barbershop quartet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Good for you.
My purple pen giveaway.
Did you guys have like matching attire?
Well, it was part of a college choir, so we were already wearing matching dresses anyway.
Very
But the guys group did put on like, yeah, little like vest things and hats. So did the
That's
thing.
awesome.
That's awesome.
Okay. Sober 35 years. I know this is Sharon. Congratulations.
Thank you. Don't ask me about the 60s, the 70s, or mostly 80s. Couldn't tell you.
Well, I think this one's Meredith. It's Asheville is the second largest city, town I have lived in.
Whoa.
Richmond's the biggest, that's where I was from.
Nice.
Great.
From Richmond, where? Oh, really?
Fun, fun.
That's
It's a
it.
good icebreaker.
Well done.
Thank you, Carl.
Nice to
Thank
get
you,
to know
Carl.
y'all a little bit more.
I should have written about my Halloween because that's my birthday.
Oh, that's fun.
Well, it's great if you like candy, but I don't like candy.
Not a big fan guy either.
You can have really fun birthday parties if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Apple dunking back in the day,
Nice.
Oh, Appleton.
dress up, ice skating rink and roller skating rinks, and everybody had on Halloween costumes. It was lots of fun.
That's really cool.
The Orange Peel was a roller skating rink,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. it used to
and
be.
that's where I would have my birthdays. It was a wooden floor, and so if you fell, it didn't hurt. But it was really fun. Everybody would dress up. We got to play who was who behind the mask. Masks were real big back in the day.
That must have been in the 60s.
50s and 60s.
Because by the late 60s, early 70s, Orange Peel was a club
Yeah.
that African Americans.
I remember that.
I used to love it. I loved it. Yeah. So I knew you had to be there in the 60s, had to be.
Mhm.
So you're a little older than me. Okay.
Wow.
I love the Orange Peel today. It was a great venue for music.
Bob Dylan's played there. I've been there many times.
All kinds of music there.
Our son's name is Dylan, and we went to see him play at Orange Peel, and my Dylan, wore a suit. And I said, "Why are you dressing like that?" He said, "Out of respect, Mom."
Nice.
Are we ready to move on to our next agenda item?
Mhm.
First up, we have a community space update from Dawa.
Okay.
A little background, Communication and Public Engagement Department, CAPE, was awarded a little over $500,000 in ARPA funds for a project entitled Inclusive and Accessible Government.
All right, first, let me just make sure you guys can hear and understand me through this mask. Okay, fantastic. All right, well, good evening, committee members. My name's Dawa Hitch, and I serve as the Communication and Public Engagement Director for the City of Asheville, and my department is also the liaison for the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. So I'm here before you today in that role with your retreat today and the focus on priorities for your work plan for this coming year. I thought that it would be helpful, knowing that we are really all in this together, staff, council, boards and commissions, for you all to have some information about some things that are happening this year, and that might inform your conversation about your priorities for the coming year. The thinking is that there could be some synergy between the two projects that I'm going to share with you and some of the duties and roles of NAC. So I'll start with a few key takeaways. The first is that as NAC discusses your work plan for the year, staff is offering 2 significant projects for NAC to consider supporting through neighborhood level engagement. The second key takeaway is that the projects have been identified as priority projects for staff and align with City Council's priority of neighborhood resilience. And the third is that the project aligns with NAC's powers and duties as defined in the committee's bylaws. So just wanted you all to have the context that with all of the projects that the city is doing, these two bubbled up to the top because of the neighborhood level engagement and that being aligned with your with your duties as defined in the bylaws. So what are the projects? One project is the ARPA Inclusive and Accessible Government Project, which Elise just mentioned. And the owner department for that project is Communication and Public Engagement. That's the department that both myself and Christina and Meredith all are a part of. And then the second project is an update to the emergency operations and continuity of operation plans that the fire department is leading, and that's that is a part of the service they provide in the area of emergency management. Let me start my timer here. All right, so the ARPA, and really the goal today is just to give you all a high-level overview. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them either while you're deliberating or right after the presentation. So the ARPA Inclusive and Accessible Government Project has 4 components. And the way that we came to this proposal was from years of community input, feedback, both at the neighborhood level and through different community engagement efforts that the city has had. And so we know that there are some areas where we need to do better, and these 4 components of the project reflect those areas. The first is a needs assessment for Spanish and Russian communication. So we've got some really base level. Our website can be Google translated. We know that that's not ideal, that it could be better. We also have a plan in place for community meetings where if the entire community is invited and it's sponsored by the city, we automatically provide translation services in Spanish. But again, that's not as good as it could be. So we want to spend the next 2 years, this is a 2-year project, really doing a needs assessment, working in collaboration with our community members who speak Spanish and Russian so that we can improve. The second is an upfit of community spaces. And the idea there is for access to decision making. So I'm going to go back to this picture real quick. The picture that I've got up there under the ARPA project is from the speaker series that launched the reparations process. And what we were able to do at that meeting was pipe in people that were at the Eddington Center so that they could participate, because we certainly recognize that people have barriers to participation, such as transportation and childcare. So we wanted to use that model and see if we can integrate that into how we do business as a city. So those community upfit spaces are meant to be a collaborative effort where 5 are identified, and investments in technology and infrastructure can be put in places that the community identifies as places where they feel comfortable. So this is really thinking outside of the box, and it is definitely meant to be collaborative. The Community Engagement Academy is a third component of this. Again, when we worked through our reparations speaker series and our reimagining public safety efforts a few years ago, we had a Community Engagement Academy. And real quick, what the goal is for that is that we have an opportunity for community members who have networks and connections to groups of people that we've historically had a hard time reaching, that they have the opportunity to be a part of that academy. And then they have the opportunity to be paid ambassadors for community engagement efforts down the road. The fourth is, and all of these are really complex, I'm trying to be really fast with the big picture view of this project. The fourth is launching virtual and hybrid meetings as a new tool in the City of Asheville engagement portfolio. So we know that COVID forced us to move quickly at the most complicated level of a hybrid meeting, and that was a city council meeting. Luckily, we had the pieces in place to be able to pivot quickly. Our original intention had been to start with community meetings, get some learning there, and then consider if, with direction from council, if we want to move into boards and commissions, council committee meetings, and at some point, city council meetings. So we want that tool in place. We know at the very least that it's a great tool for community meetings. And then we'll have some assessments and additional information to help that decision on down the road. So those are the 4 components. And how this relates to NAC is the engagement opportunities. So I mentioned before that our intention is to collaboratively identify and upfit spaces where people are already gathering. And so getting that information from neighborhoods, from folks that live in areas where maybe there's not a formal neighborhood is going to be very critical to this process, and would love to have a partnership and support and collaboration with NAC in that engagement, if that's something that you all think rises to the level of a priority for this coming year. Then the second one is to collaboratively design the next iteration of the Community Engagement Academy. And we heard a lot of great feedback from the first one and want to take that and grow and know that we want this program to meet the needs of the community, as well as some of the needs that we need or that we have in making sure our engagement is as inclusive as possible. So that's the first project. The second is the update to the emergency operations and continuity of service plans. So this is a project that's being run by the fire department. I mentioned that they are our leads for emergency management, and the plan will serve as the basis for an effective response, recovery, and resiliency to any threats that threaten the city of Asheville. Many of those could be climate threats, and so there's also some collaboration with our Office of Sustainability and their climate justice work that they're doing. And I hope you can see this theme that we're really trying to take a step back and see where there are some interrelationships between many of the things that we're doing. And we can combine those as best we can into engagement efforts so that we can address the engagement fatigue that we hear from the community about often. The plans will also facilitate the integration of response and recovery activities by accelerating important relationships. So those could be intergovernmental relationships and relationships with neighborhoods. So the engagement opportunity there is, this is going to be a massive engagement effort so that the fire department can learn things about where people are, what the challenges are, and getting information should there be some kind of hazard that we experience, whether it's flooding or landslides or a COVID-19 pandemic. In addition to the operational things that we as a city need to be able to do and making sure that we've got redundancies with who's in leadership and all of that, there is that piece of how do we connect with our community in crisis. So it's going to be a pretty significant engagement. There's a consultant that's coming on board. The RFP, I believe, is already out. We're probably getting close to reviewing the RFPs on that one. And I know for certain that a communication and engagement plan will be developed for that in partnership with the consultant. And that could be an opportunity for NAC as well to play a really important role. And this is what matters to the communities that I represent, or the communities as a whole. And we could really just extend our outreach to the community with as many partners as possible that want to jump on board. And it will also help, we believe strongly that in addition to our online engagement efforts, that people to people is really the most impactful way that we can engage and get information, so that we understand some of the nuances or some of the opportunities that are already available within neighborhoods, within their network, so there's not reinventing the wheel, right? We don't want to tell people to come to us. We want to be able to go to people where they already are. City Council priorities. I know you all are going to talk about those here in a minute, and those 2 projects definitely align with the priority of neighborhood resilience. And then with NAC's powers and duties, there's a lot that you guys have that are written out in your bylaws, but I just wanted to highlight 2 areas where we as staff think that there are connections to the powers and duties that you all have as a city council committee. And I will say that develop a plan to strengthen neighborhood identity and resilience, and then to facilitate communication and cooperation between Asheville's neighborhoods and city offices. It really seems like this plan that you all are working on for this next year, your work plan, your priorities, is an opportunity to speak to that. And then certainly any help to get information out to neighborhoods about the city plans that are being designed or implemented is always very much appreciated, knowing that you guys have strong connections in your communities. So here we are, back to the key takeaways. We talked about them before, and that's the quick overview. So really, this is just information for your consideration as you move through the rest of this evening's retreat. You're welcome.
Questions?
I have a couple of questions. Two of them. One of them is, where are we seeing this done in other cities across the United States?
Where are we seeing
This
which
type
piece
of project with the ARPA?
The ARPA project.
Uh-huh.
Well, I would say in the realm of, in the profession of public engagement, that those are some best practices that you see reflected. I would say the International Association of Public Participation is a good organization. They work across the globe and have a North American chapter. That's one of the resources that we use. It's also reflected in what we've heard from the community. So for the question, what other cities are doing this, I would say that this is designed to meet the needs of our community under the umbrella of best practices, which I would venture to say, if you Googled any communication and public engagement department across the country, that these are the best practices that they're using. Meet people where they are, co-create as much as you can, provide context so people understand what the different roles are, and then hopefully through that, opportunities will bubble to the top. So that's for the ARPA. And then I'm happy to get a list from our fire department, but I can tell you most cities across the nation have emergency operations plans. It's just it's a standard. And again, each one should be tailored for each particular community because different communities have different vulnerabilities and resources that they need to capture and use in the development of the plan. But if you would like to see I know we have one already in your hands, I think, from Knoxville. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I saw Sharon's email earlier. Yeah. But I'm sure they would be happy to just provide a list of what other cities have emergency operations plans, but it is a standard. It would be similar to like a balance sheet, right? Like every business is going to have one. It's a real standard. We have one, but it's very outdated, and it is it predates social media. So it's time to update it.
Okay. The second question I had pertaining to Gwen Whistler. Her proposal right now is to not have any more committees and to consolidate them and only have 6. And this is a 2-year project. So where are we in that realm of what City Council is wanting to do with the individual organizations like we have, where we get together and we talk about NAC, and then there's the modal program, and then there's others throughout the city that we have. And how is that going to impact us right now?
Sure. So just a few points of clarification. I'm not sure that it is accurate to say that there's a plan. Actually, I feel confident that it's not accurate to say that there's a plan to get rid of boards and commissions and have only 6.
Right.
There has been a lot of misinformation out there, and that is certainly something that staff has really been working hard to correct, and that being the misinformation. There was an idea that was posed, right? The big question was, how can boards and commissions be more efficient, effective, and inclusive? And so an idea was put out there to consider, to start a conversation. And I think we as staff could have done a better job of framing that, because it really, what we heard from all of our boards and commissions was that it felt like a decision had already been made, and that's what was going to happen. So the city clerk's office has been very clear about there is no current plan to get rid of any boards and commissions. What's happening right now is there is a survey that's been done, put together by a very hardworking working group, and that is going out to all board and commission members, current and former, The idea is to get some information from them about what's working, what's not, and then that will inform a next step. And that's just where we are. So I think the work that you all are doing here certainly has a place. I know that with the work that we're doing at the staff level, that engagement piece is really critical, and there will be, I feel confident, well, I feel that it's very important for us to continue to maintain those relationships with folks that are willing to volunteer their time and extend the reach that we have, because we'll never be able to reach everybody. And certainly we won't be able to maintain accurate information and make sure that it gets out to as many people as possible if we're not working in partnership.
Also, Wendy, Elise and I are on that subcommittee, so if you have any questions or you want to join us, we'd be happy to.
Yeah,
join you
that would be
too.
great, because I have a lot of questions, especially if this is a 2-year project, for us to put a lot of time and effort into it, and then all of a sudden we're dissolved.
Yeah,
I'm not getting this feeling from that group that that's what's going to happen. That group was very adamant from the very beginning that they didn't support the consolidation like that. And so everyone really took a step back, and the survey that's going to come out probably in November. So watch your inboxes, because you'll get it too. That data will really, I think that's going to be used rather than to like say, oh, this committee isn't working, let's cut it. It's going to better, instead that information will be used to figure out what characteristics of certain committees are making them successful. So then those processes can be replicated in the committees that maybe aren't doing as well.
I can see a lot of ideas from the rescue plan. I can really see a lot of, and I also, the other one, the updated emergency, both of those together would be absolutely dynamite to do with all of our neighborhoods.
Let me just interject as you all are going through talking about this. First of all, like Darla said, there has not been anything to say that it was a proposal because there were some boards and
Right.
committees that were not being productive, but they decided they would do the survey. That was why I always said that we are the neighborhood advisory committee. That means that everything that we do, we go back to our neighborhoods. And that's what we're here for. That's the overall picture of our neighborhood. This is the whole, if you have an association in your neighborhood, that's what you need to be going back and bringing back to us for us to make recommendations, not that we can present policies. That's number one. So I don't think that would be anything that we would have to worry about. And second of all, as we go into this neighborhood preparedness plan, I did work on a group, and I can't think, Mary, I think somebody, it was a lot of us from, I know Oakley was involved and some other neighborhoods, and we did discuss this. We came up with, I think United Way, that program about what will we do in case of an emergency. So there is something that we have put together, because if you do not realize that if there's an emergency, the first contact is your local fire department. Then there's your American Red Cross. Then the Asheville City also has with their community centers that if people cannot stay at home, that they will open up doors for that. So there is, it's not like it's not something that's already there. We have that because I know Stevens Lee has it, Shiloh has it, Oakley has it. So maybe we need to, some of the other communities that may not have that, may not know what that is, because what we realized is that you cannot wait on FEMA. FEMA comes 3 or 4 days down the line. We need to do something. So this group that we were with organized a sheet that we gave that people could put on their refrigerators as to who to call. We know places where, like my church, we have industrial freezer refrigerator that we can store food. So there are things in place. So, I think that what we need to do is we need to go back to our communities and ask our communities, what do they want? And we need to bring that back. And that's why I was hoping that Kim Roney was here, because it goes back to the city, because the work has been done. And so it's just how do we make sure that every community knows about what's already out there.
Absolutely. And if I could, if I could add it, that is the real opportunity, because here is what I would say mediocre engagement looks like. You have a template, you go, you do an online survey, you might like walk around, knock on some doors and get some information. But what it's missing is that environmental scan of understanding what already exists. Where are people already? And build on those places where there's momentum, and then also supplement that, complement that with your, more typical mass audience type of engagement. And so that point there it was really the inspiration behind bringing this to NAC for you all to consider, knowing that you've got those connections and having that what already exists information can help this emergency operations plan be more successful.
Right, so I also did research on that in my neighborhood and another neighborhood. And there was talk about something here and there, but we had no specifics in my neighborhood nor the other Kenilworth when I talked with them. So there were things that they knew about, but they didn't know where it was and what it was. So what I did is, this is when I printed, because I looked online, I spent a considerable amount of time researching what the city had online. And basically what we have online is what the Red Cross offers. And then we've taken that, put it on our webpage. So what I did when, at least down the city of Knoxville, we went through it and I thought, well, a lot of this was city of Knoxville, but a lot of it is also specifics of what we can use.
Exactly.
And to make everybody's talking the same language. So when they put up on the refrigerator like they're gonna do, they're all putting up the same thing with the same contact, because I found in our research, as Dawn, I think mentioned, it's a long time ago.
Well, this is out now. This is what I'm gonna tell you, take a step back. This is what I'm gonna tell you, take a step back. You need to get with the city. The fire department knows, they know. In your area, when your area, if you're dealing with East End Valley, they know what to tell you. The people that are in charge of Parks and Rec are very valuable with telling you where you need to go, where they will have places set up for people to come if they're displaced from their homes in the case of an emergency. So there are things, it is out there. It may not be where everybody knows, but you've got to go to the places, because I had it, we have it, and Shiloh has it, Oakley has it. We were in a meeting, and I would go back to Miss Sophie Dixon and ask her who else was in that meeting. It was the people with, I think, Bountiful Cities or somebody. We were all in this meeting, and we talked about this because they didn't realize. And Tamika from the city, she actually was there, and she was the one that said, okay, well, yes, we do have it in place. Stevens Lee is the first place.
Yep.
And then, so I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
know,
just saying,
yeah.
don't try to reinvent a wheel that's already started turning. So I would say, go back, go to the fire department, ask them what they do have in place. If your community is not prepared, if they're not prepared, go to them and get that information. The American Red Cross off of Merriman Avenue has all of the resources of what to do in the case of an emergency. So instead of, I don't know where your research was, but I'm talking about reconnecting people with people and talking to people. This is what I know because I was in on that. So I would say, let's not take a lot of time on it, but for whatever you all are doing, then just make sure that you're not trying to reinvent something, because you will spend valuable time doing stuff that's already, they've got it already in place. So
Right.
that's all I'm saying.
I imagine there are lots of neighborhoods that have this in place, and it might just be like getting them with the fire department so that the fire department has their most up-to-date
Thank you.
plan.
There you go.
Or
Yeah.
then what it brings to me is, why would they get this money for the crisis response planning with the actual fire department if we were all consistent with it? Otherwise, why would they do this?
They're doing it because they need more funding to have that in place in case of an emergency. They need more resources. The fire department, they would need more things for an emergency crisis, so they need some of the money. I'm not saying, I don't want to spend time on this. I want us to move on. But I'm just saying that our language and what we say, we've got to really be in place with that. So I'm not saying that your community, you may not know it, but I know my community knows it. I know Oakley knows it. And if you go to Stevens Lee, they know, the city knows it. Parks and Recs, they know that. They know what it is. So all I'm saying is just do some talking to them. Those are the people to go to talk to about what they already have in place. And like Darwin said, we can build on it instead of trying to put something. Because if you go back and you try to put a plan together and then you take it to them and they say, we already have this in place, then you've wasted time.
Well, then let me ask Dawa. Dawa, what are they hired in for a consultant to do?
Put together a plan that lists out how we will respond to different types of crises, I guess. I mean, if it is similar to our current one, I don't ever like to speak for another department, but I feel like I've got a base level to help this conversation. But typically, they're big, and they give examples of if you have this kind of hazard, this is what's going to happen. These different departments are going to be the lead. They need representation. And then if you need to connect with the community, here are ways to connect with the community. So that's what the plan looks like at the end of the day, right? And there's an education component to that too. But in order for them to get to that end point, they need that engagement, which is where you all could come in, because different neighborhoods are at different places. So they really just want to get a scan of, okay, there's, 10 neighborhoods.
Consistency all the way around.
That's right. So we
That's
can move fast in the case of an
correct,
emergency.
Because I know Easton Valley does it, but I didn't talk to Stevens Lee because I assumed Stevens Lee was the same as Easton Valley. So I can go talk to Stevens Lee and find out what they have in formulation. And then everything else is in 28805 and see then how consistent are they through the fire department so that we can fix the holes that are not consistent.
So,
Yeah.
so to me, your whole would be the people in Kenilworth that may not have all of that except they may not know that. So that's why I'm saying, instead of trying to say, okay, there's no plan, there is a plan. There's something out there.
Yeah.
And everybody doesn't know. So the outlying areas, you got to realize Stevens Lee is part of the city, Parks and Recs, but East End Valley, that's an association.
Right.
So what you need to do is connect with Stevens Lee. You need to connect with Renee White and Stevens Lee to get that together to wherever it is so that people would be informed.
Yeah, but they don't have that. They
Okay.
heard about it, but I know they don't,
Right.
nor
Okay,
does
so-
Kenilworth, but the fire department I didn't go to.
Well, and
That's
I
what
can
you need to do.
say, so where we are in this process, that's why this plan is coming into place. They're going to give some information about what would be helpful to go out and get from the community. So there would be a bit of a roadmap so that we can fill in any gaps in either resources or information or practices so that every neighborhood, we as a community get into the same rhythm. Because if it's a big emergency, if it's a flood, we're talking minutes and we're sending out AVL alerts, and we need to make decisions really fast because public safety, life safety is what's at risk. So the more organized all that information is and the more similar it can be from neighborhood to neighborhood, the faster we can communicate. And we also want to know, like those stickers, like I have 3 dogs in my house, just knowing what the needs are. It would be helpful to know, say, this neighborhood has many elderly people in it. So that's kind of a different response than a young startup neighborhood where you've got lots of young families and maybe mobility wouldn't be an issue. So it's comprehensive,
So that's why
this plan.
That's why you need that. It's not like that there's not something in place, but it's got to be something that's accessible for everybody. So it's best for them to put that together. So I would say go back to your neighborhoods and ask them what are they lacking? What are they lacking? What do they want to see in this process? After you tell them, the most important thing is the fire department and the American Red Cross, and where you would need to go if there's each person in your community, where you would need to go if you could not stay in your home. Those would be the 3 things I would say that I would take back to my community, because that's what I had to do. So I had to go back and I had to say, well, my church has, we can accommodate, we can store food. So we needed to tell our seniors in our neighborhood that maybe you need to start thinking about canned foods. That something, if there was something that's something that you could eat, because if the power's down, you have no refrigeration. And so, and the water. And so I think that the centers and the fire department will start with water, things like that. So just be mindful of that.
I think part of the emergency planning is also like identifying where there might be generators and stuff like that.
And the city they have those. That was what Tamika told us, that they do have. I know Stevens Lee has generators.
Yes.
And Shiloh does too. So we got to make sure the other areas, wherever you're in, that's something that you would want to ask to take back if you had a neighborhood meeting or something, take back to them to find out if they had that. Because if you're over in, let's say Livingston area, would it be Wesley Grant Center or would it be?
Or Livingston Center.
Yeah, and so that would be where you would find out whether or not, what is the plan if there's an evacuation? So then you could start that kind of process. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so then I think, seeing how this is retreat and we're trying to think of methodologies for all the zip codes that we're involved with, that would be all of us that are involved in the zip codes to reach out to all the neighborhoods that are in those zip codes, compile
No.
because Kenilworth doesn't have anything.
Okay, but don't reach out to every zip code. If I'm gonna reach out to 2803 and 28704, that's where I live, and that's where I'm getting. I want everybody to. What zip code do you have?
That's what I'm saying, we reach out to each individual zip
But
code
no.
that we're.
Let them, yeah.
See, I'm 04.
I'm a five.
Right, but each representative reach out
That's
to
what I
their
know.
At
neighborhood.
large is a whole nother ballgame.
Yes, but in 28805, I've got 15 neighborhoods, that's why we have them large.
You have 15
So,
neighborhoods.
yeah, something like that, association, so 12, something of that.
I think we can probably divide and conquer, but it sounds like generally everyone is on board for being involved in this project.
I just don't want to get, neighborhood associations can be kind of testy if you go outside of your own neighborhood, if they have an association. That's what I'm saying. So maybe, if you have an association, if everybody goes to where they are, you're saying Kenilworth does not have one.
No,
But are you in that, who's the zip
that's
code?
28805.
That's you. So
That's
you've got Kenilworth.
Right, and I've got the new one that, there's a lot in 28805 that are smaller, that are brand new.
Maybe we need to break down
And so,
something with the city.
well, I have, it's already broken down in the map.
I'm not trying to persuade. I'm not trying to persuade. This is y'all's decision if you want this to be one of your priority projects for next year. But I can say that if it were a priority project, then that would carve out some time through our monthly meetings to really make sure that everybody's got a solid roadmap, right? To be able to go out and do the work, to get information to bring back to the consultants so that it can all be drafted, and then it would need to go back out again and say, this is what we think we heard. Does this feel right? What are we missing? So it's a lot of work, and the onus would not be just on the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. If you all chose to make that one of your priorities for this year, you'd have staff, both in the Communication and Public Engagement Department and the Fire Department, as well as a consultant to help bounce ideas and help formulate what that engagement plan would look like. And then as you're engaging, have them as a resource.
I don't think we all need to go out and do this right now. It's gonna
No.
be like a
Well,
longer
I'm just
process.
asked, it's a fact-finding mission. I just started by asking my neighborhood and other neighborhoods who are in my zip code responsibility, what do you have? And then there was a discussion at our neighborhood meeting, well, we used to have, but we don't have anything anymore. I remember one, and there was that kind of discussion. So I'm thinking that I didn't bother to go to our fire department, said, hey, do you have an emergency preparedness? It's for our 28805 or 28801 or
But who's
whoever's
28801?
28801.
I want to say the last time anything like that was done is during the Cold War with Kennedy. Everybody was very, very concerned at that time about what was, we were building bomb shelters in our backyards. So I'm going back to that time, that was 1962.
So I'm thinking like Bobette, we don't need to go into extensive, but it'd be nice if I know what we have.
Exactly.
Right.
And if Bobette has a list of these already, if you could provide that for us, and then we can then ask our neighborhoods, have you seen this? Do you know what this looks like? Have you have any idea about this? Then that would help us try to explain it to them if we had an example of what you're referring to.
Yeah, and I understand, it makes sense, it's just, I don't want, if the city is proposing to do what they're gonna do, and that's their scope of work of putting all these components together, so everybody will be on the same page, I wouldn't want us to just, we could get information to get to them, so as they start to research it, then they would be able to
And I
have some
can
things.
reach out to the Red Cross there in my neighborhood,
I used to work for the Red Cross.
and the fire department's right there too. So I can see arranging to have all my presidents from the organizations come and meet at one location, like for example, the community center under the fire department, and talk about what kind of emergency plan have they got in place? Or is this something they are lacking, or do they need something?
So then we need to decide what is our scope on this so that we're not lost.
And I
in
would
the
like to
weeds with
see
this.
something like this, Sharon, put in place on a particular day that all the communities are doing this together. So no one neighborhood doesn't say, oh, well, they're not doing that over there. But if we came together as a team and said, okay, this is going to be the night that we're going to arrange this, and then have it happen, I think it would be a wide Asheville project. It will be embraced.
Yeah, and before we have to have the data, before we.
Yes, we need to have all of our
We have
ducks
to
in a
have
row.
we have to have some data with what don't we have and what do we have.
But I
And then we can pilot onto DAWA and say, here's our data. And I don't think, as far as time goes, we're committed to being in the neighborhood advisory committee and if we're going to pick up a project, and I don't think any of us want to dig a hole and bury ourselves.
Well, and I want to see,
Piecemeal.
I'd like to see the whole city embrace it at one time.
But you know what, that sounds good, that sounds really good. But to do that is something a task that I don't think that NAC can take on.
Well, and I don't think
I'm-
NAC
I'm
has to take
serious.
it
I
on.
think it's
You
not
know,
something
if
that we'll do.
if this is something that you all are interested in, it could certainly be enough just to say that one of your priorities is to support the community engagement around the emergency
but
operations
not for us to
plan.
do it.
And so you've said, yep, we're going to do it. And then as the consultant comes on board and as the project's the final scoping of it and the engagement is happening, then that's a clue to me that, hey, I'm going to talk to the
plan,
chair and
yeah.
vice chair and see if an update can be put on the agenda, and then you all can decide which pieces of that engagement you'd like to be involved in, right? Because there's a number of stages. Just here's some general ideas for y'all to think about as you start off. And then there's the boots on the ground, once we've decided how we're going to do the engagement, where we could use your
When
support
is
and
this person
assistance.
coming on board?
I don't know yet, but we're
Next year.
reviewing, no, it'll be sooner than that. This project is supposed to be completed by 2023, June 2023. So
I
it's
just
a,
don't want us to jump the gun. I don't
Right.
want us to take off because it sounds good if we could get everybody together in one space and we could all, it sounds good. But when you talk about the outlying areas that you may not be thinking about all the way south, west, north is fine, but then you got to have a central meeting place. That's something that I say to let the city do. We can give a recommendation that needs to happen, but we don't take on the task, let them.
right, and that can be a collaboration
happened
between
before.
staff, yep, and the committee.
When they would come, I remember something was at the civic center one time and we all came in about some planning and something. So we can do that, but let's let them do it. So it's time to move on, I think.
So what I'm hearing is that we're at a stage where we don't need to be formulating anything. We'll just wait till the consultant comes back to us and says, this is what we're doing, and maybe they have an idea where we could help.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, and then-
other than that,
then
because
there's-
what I'm hearing is that it's just too early
Yes, too early to do
Formulating
specific
anything.
actions, but not too early to say, yeah, we want to spend a lot of time this next year doing it.
Yeah.
And then that right there is the trigger for staff to make sure, hey, could we have 30 minutes to brainstorm things that you all think would be really cool to consider as we develop the engagement plan, right? And then the consultant goes back and they do, and staff, and we do our stuff, and then we might come back and say, all right, now it's time to mobilize. Can we go back out to the community and say, here's what here's what they're thinking. Does this resonate with you? What did they forget? So there's a couple different touches, but certainly not something that NAC has to own on its own.
Okay, well, that clarifies it.
Yeah.
We good.
That's good. Well, we've got City of Knoxville, let's look at your ideas.
Yeah. They've got a good baseline in there. Thanks, Tawa. We're gonna move on now after that bit about aligning our work with council priorities. If you haven't, I think Dawa had it in her presentation also, but if you need a refresher, there are 6 council priorities. Yes, improve and expand core services, houselessness strategies, equitable and affordable housing and stability, neighborhood resilience, reimagining public safety, and reparations. And certainly we as a group could align our work to work with any of these different priorities, but it seems like the most applicable to our work is the neighborhood resilience. And so I have planned, I don't know if it's possible to share on there the little jam boards that I created and I linked on the agenda.
If you want to email it to me, is my laptop pulled up there that I could click?
Yeah.
I also, while you're doing that, I also printed out community resilience from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And like for our last conversation, how are community resilience and disaster preparedness related? Which I didn't think about as resilience.
What now? Say that again.
What's your email?
How are community resilience and disaster preparedness related?
Okay, so what you didn't think about?
Yeah, I didn't think about the preparedness, emergency preparedness and resilience.
Yeah, I got you.
So when I was looking at what is community resilience, I mean, I have my own thoughts on it. So I thought, well, what does everybody else think about community resilience? Why is it important? How does health fit into community? What makes a community healthy and resilient? Strategies to build resilient communities. In what ways can I strengthen my individual health and resilience as an interpersonal level? So,
What is the city of Asheville's definition of neighborhood resilience?
I couldn't find that.
Yeah, we couldn't find that either.
Well, I did have a couple of definitions put up on my jam boards if they'll make it up there.
Has your email come through?
Here we go. There it is. One definition that I know Sharon has offered before is the ability to return to its original shape, which you might think of like, a resilient type of metal, a spring metal or something. When I think of resilience, I also think of the capacity to recover from a difficulty or challenge. So I thought for this first little bit here, we could maybe brainstorm on what type of difficulties our neighborhoods might face.
Is that okay to leave it like that?
Yeah. If anyone wants to like play along on their own laptop, that you can add like sticky notes and notes, or if we just want to like generally discuss.
That's what you meant by jam board.
Yeah, we did it during it's collaborative. But so let's just spitball some challenges.
I know the difficulties in the Easton Valley is tax increase due to new building coming up that's being sold at high, enormous costs.
Yeah, I think development right now is
Yeah.
a pretty massive
Yeah.
issue, not only with tax serious taxes going in.
And also
Potentially.
gentrification with
I
that.
know those are all super small and difficult to see. Let's see if I
I
can do
thought you were being
something.
sarcastic about the topics.
No, no, that's not what I was saying at all.
And I'm saying be the
Oh,
same.
that's
with
better.
Most of our neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be, those are very common themes throughout. We all live in the city of Asheville and we're all working with development. Gentrification.
Can I ask a question? What do you all see as gentrification in neighborhoods? What do you see? When you say gentrification is something that about resilience, how is that affected?
Well, we see that we're working on our vision plan in Eastern Valley, and we're seeing it as the drop in affordable housing for people who's moving out and who's moving in. And we're statistically putting it together that we're losing our typically neighborhoods of color, and it's becoming more class structured, different than what it was. And we're finding that out by working with census. And we don't know how it was or what it was, but now that we're working on vision plan, we're seeing it more. And we're basing that on the fact that we're becoming a neighborhood that people that work here can't live in our neighborhood. They've got to go outside the area to live.
Transportation alone, I mean, we don't have enough sidewalks for people to walk on that are safe. And so when we're looking at development, we're looking at a facility that is going to incorporate sidewalks in the neighborhoods for them to be able to feel safe when walking on them and not feel like you're going to get run over by a car. If you're walking along the side and your dog gets hit and killed, like happened to a neighbor over in Lake Shore. There's no sidewalks over there. And this is a major issue. And the ADA compliant, they are not. They have started slanting, but there's no bumps for
The rumble
people that-
strips.
Yes, and that is for people with seeing difficulties. So they'll let them know where the sidewalk begins, and those are not even present. They started and then they stopped.
Definitely, I agree that sidewalks are a big
Well, when I
big
think
deal.
of East End, and you can address this maybe a bit, when my father had a grocery store down in East End on Valley and Eagle Street, Feldman's Grocery.
What, call what? Name of it was what?
Feldman's Grocery,
That was East End.
that's my
That was
father.
your father? Wonderful. I've read wonderful stories about that store.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we had sidewalks all around the grocery
I got
store.
pictures of it.
Oh, yes, and wide sidewalks. And we would come and park down there, but there's no sidewalks now. I mean, it's terrible. We really have a huge need to put back, if we're gonna put back the resilience that we used to have by returning to its original shape, that's gonna be a major hurdle because there's so many areas that need to be addressed.
So that was on the corner
Yes.
of Market and.
No, Valley and Eagle. So as you were coming down, the red light was right there, and my father's grocery store was right on the corner.
And had Reynolds on top, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
They were red on the side. It was beautiful.
Sharon, if you ever need any stories.
I've read your stories. I've been down at the library because we're working on Eastern Valley, and I'm reading all the stories to put into our history so that we can establish a neighborhood like we would like to see for people coming in that can afford to come in.
Used to be an A&P store before my father took it over.
And then there was a store across the street.
Yeah, Reds.
Okay, so let's not get off topic.
Yeah,
Let's not get off topic with that. But what I want to say is, when I asked about gentrification, and you described about how people that work in the city cannot afford to live there, and you talk about resilience and recovering, that comes down to me as part of reparation too.
Yeah.
Also, and what I will say is, and I'm gonna leave it alone, because, I'm on the reparation board, and so I'm gonna say this. Asheville is a place that if you wasn't raised here, you don't know a thing about.
You don't have any.
You don't have a clue to what we went through. Just like her story is different from my story. My definition of gentrification is everything that was taken from us to build something else. And now we struggle to be able to keep our homes, in great shape. Taxes increase, everything else that's been taken, and people come into a neighborhood because we don't realize it's the land that's important, not the houses. So I would say that resilience would be an educational piece. It's got to be educational because they do not know. And if you're involved in East End Valley Street, I remember, like she would remember, when that area, I had friends that lived. I think it's a shame that they changed the name of Valley Street to South Charlotte Street.
Yes.
All the things, so those are some harms. So I kind of wanted to talk about, I asked, what did you think gentrification was? And I don't know, I think in some of the outlying areas where people were almost like farmers and they had property they couldn't keep up, and some of them lost theirs too at a price. So when we start looking at all those and the food deserts and where are they, do you really know where the food deserts are? Do we really know? We as a committee need to know these things. And so we have to come outside of our comfort zone because we're gonna make this a staple. Because I was raised in Stumptown. They took Stumptown. But my street that I was raised on is still there. My house that I was raised in is still there. But my friends on the other street, that's not there. You look around at Shiloh, we contain ourselves. But we fight every day to keep things out from gentrification. You believe the cost of houses in Shiloh, if I didn't live on my property that my ancestors had dating to the 1800s, I couldn't afford to live in Buncombe County. So when we start, let's not just concentrate on that little bitty piece, but if we're gonna deal with development, tax increase, food deserts, you know what that means? Places where people cannot just go to the grocery store. If you don't know what that is, that's people and that's why we have a community engagement market, because people are hungry. What do we do? So that's what that is. So let's, housing prices exceeding wages. All of those are pieces. So we've got to decide what it is that we want to focus on because there's so many pieces.
Right. And right.
See
We're
what I'm saying?
brainstorming like the big idea.
So let's
right
make
now.
sure that as we look at this, we prioritize what it is we're gonna start with and what's the most important and how we're gonna move forward. Because the harm has been done. I'm not old as you are, but in the 50s, I remember uptown in Woolworth and having to go to the block. I remember all of those things. So let's just kind of like make sure that we're in the places where we need to that are most important to us. I would say home ownership, people not being able to, that would be branched
They
into.
can't even
not
afford
a-
the rent.
Right,
Right.
that's what I'm saying.
Nothing can be
All of
afforded.
Well, Eastern Valleys ended up being more rentals than homeowners.
Well, and
We
then-
began to work on that. The statistics.
Well, see,
are
what's so
amazing.
bad about East End right now is that they keep on building those homes down there and it's driving the taxes high. And these poor people can't even afford
Exactly.
over on Mack Street. I mean,
I had a friend
As
who lived on that
Paulette
street.
said, so as our job is NAC, what, are we going to identify what resilience
I mean, we
is
have-
and give it to the,
we're up at
give it to council?
We're gonna get to find out what our priorities are. If we're gonna do neighborhood resilience, if that's something that we're going to really concentrate on, let's decide. Because I was actually on the reappraisal commission, and whether you believe it or not, we did make some headway. And Keith Miller actually did. He was reported to the commissioner on some things that we're doing about taxes and about how, you got a lot of Airbnbs. Do you know that
Yeah, we do.
the hotel that's down there on Eagles, is it Eagle? That used to be,
It's all Airbnb.
it's a hotel, and only the first floor is a hotel, and the other floors are Airbnbs, and that's supposed to be illegal. Not supposed, but they've done that. And so, what are we gonna concentrate on? What we can right now start to send to
Right.
them, and then we'll prioritize and keep on going, because we got what we want for the next year, what we can handle
Yeah.
right now.
Can someone flip to the next slide on the Jamboard here?
We feel that one up there.
Yeah, we could fill it up more.
Oh, I'm sure, and we can certainly come back to
Well,
these
we
in
could do
another
South Slope
meeting
and
at another time.
South side is flooding always, the infrastructure of South Side, and they're
I'm
trying to
gonna
build
put that
all
on
these.
here, the stormwater.
We have infrastructure problems big time.
Well, that's your area, isn't it, Carl?
Mhm.
Okay, so I let Carl know.
You know, since
I
we
know, I
complain
mean,
about it.
that's,
I just open my mouth as usual.
I'm enjoying the dialogue taking place. A lot of it is preaching to a choir.
Well, what I was
And
saying,
what I want to do is, one thing I want to make sure that we do is show support for council's actions. But there's a lot of crossover with the council's needs, like reparations and neighborhood resilience are hand in hand. Reparations and many of those things are.
and so what I would say to you is if anybody has anything that they would like to know about reparations, or if you
Yes.
want to say anything,
Yeah.
that if I can take that back, I'm not, all our meetings are open,
Mhm.
but I mean, it's enormous. It's enormous. When you think about, I'm looking at Wendy,
You have no idea what the reparations have to do with me. It's just absolutely, my father's store was where actually.
I remember.
He had no choice. The state came and took it. And,
You know why they made it eminent
it
domain?
was horrible.
Because all the other people that lived in those apartments on Valley Street were
Oh.
renters, and the people that were slumlords, they sold it
Yes,
for
I
a big
know.
price, and that's why your father had no choice. So see
But
that,
he-
your
but
story-
the coal yard, the barber shop, the grocery, the restaurant, everything that was there, there was a whole big block. You should have seen all.
I lived it, but
It's
what I need to do is,
so horrible.
they need to know that you have a story too. So, and that's,
Right,
and I
never
understand.
mind.
I would be more than happy to come and talk to your group if you needed this.
But I think that you would be more efficient with East End Valley, what Renee is done. for
I
the
know.
winter. She's done for the
What's
winter.
happened over
She's not
this.
gonna have, but I think it's important. I think it's something that needs to be talked about, and I think that,
Well, I, not to change the subject, but what has happened is that it has concentrated on the Black community, and my father was white, and it attributed to him as well as the religion. My we're Jewish, we're minority, and the list goes on and on and on about all the reparations that are going on, which I'm for the people that live in that community, but we also need to think about the people that were pushed out, not only the Black, but the white.
but I want you to understand something, that as we talk about reparations, and I think we can go over time a little bit. What I want to say to you is don't get caught up in that, because the harm that was done to your father and his business did not cause you all to be poor. Not poor, because I'm talking about the people that I know that lost everything,
I realize
and they
that,
had to move into the projects.
but my father
He lost his business.
he lost his entire life.
But you still survived it. We got people that had to move into areas that were
They were
not.
bombed repeatedly.
But you got to understand, when reparation talks about harm,
The
It talks
Molotov
about-
cocktails, I mean, you would not believe the things that I can remember sitting in front of the grocery store in the middle of the night at midnight, and they were still throwing them on top of the roof, the Molotov cocktails.
we're gonna close this out with just one comment that I want to tell you. When you talk about your reparations and what you think is happening, my father was 6'4". He worked at the Asheville Biltmore Hotel. He was one of the people that, I was a bellhop or something. But whites were so intimidated by him that they used to bet on if they could beat him up. And my father would come home beat up, and he drank all the time because that's what they did to him, because he was 6'4", and they were offended by him. So when we talk about what harm was done, and if it hadn't been for my mom, we wouldn't have had anything, because it drove him to drink all the time, because every time he went to work, he would run the risk of being beat up for somebody to have money. So let's go on. We're gonna leave that part alone. We're gonna leave that part alone, because that's hurting me too. So let's go to something else.
Sergeant Fleming?
Yep, I know them all. Phil, Slim, and all, but let's go, because it's 7:19.
So,
There have been a lot of atrocities throughout Asheville's history.
Oh, it's
There
hard.
have been a lot of atrocities in Asheville.
And that's what I'm saying. To me,
Yeah.
when you talk about what your father lost, when I talk about seeing my father come home like that, and to know that he was hurt, it just, and then when I talked to my nephew was the one that made me remember all those things. It's what we went through. You cannot imagine for what you lost.
They put swastikas on our car.
Well, so let's go on.
Yeah.
Let's
We
go
need
on,
to
Carl.
make an acknowledgement of generational wealth versus
Right.
generational abuse, and those are the two completely different things that have happened there.
You're right.
And that's where reparations plays such an important role in trying, and it's what attempt that can be made to make that better.
Right.
now I know in Kenilworth Forest, having worked with the neighborhood association there, that there was this huge development that was coming in, that was taking their trails, and it was gonna be built on a creek that dumped into Kenilworth Lake, and it was gonna silt in Kenilworth Lake. And the people that bought the property were going to take and pipe in, because they were allowed to pipe in and destroy that whole creek and run a pipe in it to move the water and move it directly into Kenilworth Forest. And there were olive arcs, and there was a development that went in that same place before that. The developer came in, but the neighborhood fought it successfully, and this other developer came in, and it was going to go through, and it was going through all the processes, and the neighborhood got all up in arms. That what they did is they got together and they bought the land, and they bought it from the developer and said, basically, we won't give you any more grief. We're going to buy it. We're going to do with it as we choose to do with it. And so in the 28805 area, the resilience says every piece of developable land is going to go into these huge complexes that we're going to destroy what that neighborhood looked like. So they banded together and said, what can we do? So the resilience in that neighborhood is about maintaining their green infrastructure, their parks, their trails as best they can.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that is indicative to that neighborhood.
And then there's another situation over in Robin Hood at Lakeview Park, that Woodfin, the problem is Woodfin City has approved 17 acres of huge apartment buildings. And the only way that these people can access this property is through Reynolds Mountain, and it's going up through Lakeview Park to get to these apartments that are up there that are on Woodfin property. And these people are, and it's steep slope, and they are not going to do anything about it.
So on that note about developments, how do we think that NAC can better support our neighborhoods in addressing those developmental concerns when they come up?
As I think Dallas stated earlier, is that community engagement process that we have through Simplicity and through knowledge of understanding. The fact is, as community leaders, I'm signed up, we all should be signed up for all the developments that come through, so that we can let the neighborhoods know, or a contact person in the neighborhood, that there's this development coming through. If you don't have somebody that is following Simplicity like I do, and then I'll contact the neighborhood representative and say, are you aware that there's a large project
And then
coming
all
through?
these apartments that they're building are short-term rentals.
Well, that's not.
And that is adding more traffic
That's not the city, because the city is not allowed to do any more short-term rentals, so that's
That's right.
we're dividing up.
What I'm gonna tell you is, your community needs to have a plan that's adopted by the community association and the city. Shiloh has one. In our plan, we have to be notified of anything that's coming in, if it's commercial close to our neighborhood. If there is someone wants to do a whole complex of homes, they have to come and we have to talk to them. Ingalls is getting ready to shut down on Hendersonville Road to build. They're gonna be down for maybe 2 years to build, but they had to come to Shiloh with their plans. So now I'm saying, it's not that complicated. But if you've got a community association, that's what you build on, that you get a plan. Maybe you need to do a 2050 plan. And that would be, one thing I would say is you can possibly ask the city for an exemptions on some areas that might be separate.
Yeah, and that brings us into the zoning. Eastern Valley is updating theirs in the vision plan. We're using Shiloh's as a template because it's a good one, and it's done with Shiloh working really hard with the city. The city said at that point in time when they were dealing with Eastern Valley, they don't have the time anymore to work with us, so we formed a group in our neighborhood, and we are working on it using your community. And we're trying to deal with the zoning issues. So each community has different zoning issues with different criteria. And we're pretty well constrained by Raleigh, telling us what we can and cannot do. But as a neighborhood, if we have a strong coalition, like Bob had said, then we can have a say. We may not win, but we've got a say in what development looks like and how we feel about it. Working with Woodland, which is a new neighborhood association called Sulphur Springs. They formed to battle the development called Woodland. And they made some changes. It's still going through, but they made some changes that weren't happy with everybody, but there were some changes made. It didn't look like it originally was going to look, and that's what happened with cohesiveness. Sulphur Springs became a neighborhood association.
So that's what I'm gonna say, and that's how we do that. If you get, you can, what I've learned is you can complain all you want to, but unless you have something that's in stone with the city, they're gonna do what they can do, and it's not gonna, it's just, we're able to say that we are not allowing any commercial, anything in our neighborhood. We have a plan where the houses can be but so tall, all those things. So, that's what you do. So, can we go on to the volunteer of the year? Because I'm tired of him. Oh, the volunteer spotlight. I'm tired of him. I mean, the process has been going on for 3 years. For like 3 years, we've been talking about the volunteer, and I'm ready for the volunteer to get the volunteer so we can move on to something else. But I like those ideas that are up there.
I'm adding one more note from Wendy. What did you say? Oh, Shiloh as a template.
And I have a copy of that.
Say it. Okay, what are we at? We're at 7:30. We're gonna jump ahead to local hero volunteer spotlight, and then if we have time, we'll jump back and do some maybe do some more brainstorming on that and pick some priorities. So there was a small committee or working group that recommended a couple of nominations for the local hero volunteer spotlight for this quarter, and they are Angela Young, Michael Stratton, and Lee Arabian. And there were 2 other applicants as well. The agenda has links to these applications if you would like to view them. I was hoping people might view them before they got here. Does anyone want to make any comments about those recommendations?
Can we quickly
Questions?
as a group look at just
Yeah.
briefly
I guess I can't.
What are we calling it, neighborhood heroes?
Neighborhood volunteer spotlight,
Neighborhood volunteer spotlight.
volunteer.
Okay.
Please let this stay this way, because we changed this thing.
Have you-
But I want to say, Michael Stratton, that was who I kind
Yeah.
of gravitated.
I can read the most of the nominations are brief, so I can read them really quickly. For Angela Young, she's in the Hillcrest Apartments neighborhood. The nominee or the nominator said about her, organized a neighborhood council for the community, always volunteers to help with food distribution and events, being a positive influence throughout the neighborhood. Then we have Michael Stratton. If I'm shivering, it's because it's really cold in here.
Is it possible to change the temperature in
No, we're
here?
getting ready to go.
Michael is of the Oakley neighborhood. The nominator said Michael led the effort to establish a neighborhood association. He volunteered his backyard for a community resilience garden, which donates harvests to Bounty and Soul. Michael was the primary coordinator for our 2 neighborhood open streets events, which brought neighbors together to envision a new way to experience our shared spaces. Through leading committees, coordinating volunteer cleanup days, and tending the resilience garden, Michael made our neighborhood more connected and vibrant. And then we have Lee Arabian. Lee is in the Grove Park Sunset Mountain Association. Lee is an advocate for our neighborhood and surrounding area. He is always looking at ways to improve communication, volunteer, take action, and get things done. He collaborates with others to help bring the issues to the city and areas in which we live. We are fortunate to have him help bring the 3 homes on Charlotte Street to everyone's attention and find a way to help stop the developer from tearing down these homes and the old Fuddruckers restaurant. To working on the diet for Charlotte Street, to now volunteering to be president of the Grove Park Sunset Mountain Association. We are truly lucky to have him in our corner of Asheville. And there were 2 other applicants that I think we're just going to save them for maybe like the next quarter.
We're going to reach out to those people and ask them for more information if possible.
Yes.
So because we had talked about this for such a long time, my suggestion, and I would like to put this out, that we approve all 3 of those people and have each one have the first quarter, the second quarter, and the third quarter for 2022 rather.
Of 2023?
Yeah, and then we would get the new group for 23. So
Gotcha, I gotcha.
So it'd be,
It's kind of like back.
yeah. I
I
just feel like we have allowed this to drag on for such a long time. And these people's submissions have been with us for a couple of years, I believe. And it's just sad that this has happened this way, and we have not been able to pick up the ball and run with it. So my suggestion, I would like to put to a vote that we vote for all 3, and each one be responsible for a quarter or trimester for the year of 2022.
That sounds like a motion.
That's,
Do I get a second?
I second it.
Okay, question, I have a question.
okay.
I like the idea of all 3, but if you're gonna do all 3, let's not do them by quarter, just do all 3. Don't do them by quarter. That makes, if you're gonna do them, because what we'll do is present it to the city council, and the city council will have a certificate, am I right? Let's just do it. That's my question. Why can't we just do all 3 instead of, let's not do a quarter here, a quarter there, and a quarter the next
Just
time?
for the year 2022.
Yeah, because we missed, and if there's anything said, I can say it's because we had COVID and we were not meeting and all that time. Let's do it I would rather do it like that than to have them, because it's like, where you placing them, in what order? No, let's just do it.
I'd support that also.
So I'll change the
I'll let you do that.
suggestion, and that we vote for all 3, and that way all 3 are recognized
Do I get a
as
second?
volunteer of the year.
Okay, do we get a second?
That's second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We good.
Awesome.
Yay!
Yay!
It's done, we're done. We're
Yes,
done, we're
yes.
done.
That's the first one in a long time. We've been.
Okay.
We've been playing with that baby for a long time.
I would like to take a moment, if I may, and talk with you about someone that is on our side that is doing a phenomenal job for us, and that is Meredith. Thank you, Meredith. You have no idea what Meredith has been doing this past couple of weeks with me. And we had a big problem over in our neighborhood. 3 streets were being repaved. And one of them is Lookout Drive or Lookout Road. Another one was Fenner, and another one was Stillwell. Well, I got the information from Meredith. I printed out all of these forms, passed them to all the homes all up through this whole area, made sure everybody was aware that the repaving was happening. We were holding because of the weather was starting to get cold. Meredith kept me abreast of everything. Then there were 2 more streets. Get a load of this. One of them was Edgewood Knoll, and the other one was Durwell. And they're calling me and saying, well, these 2 streets are being closed. Well, then I reached out to Meredith and I said, tell me why these 2 streets are being closed. Come to find out, these 2 streets aren't even under the city's auspices. They are privately owned with the Edgewood Knoll Apartments. So I did not know this. She did. And she not only sent me an entire list of all the streets in Asheville that are owned by the city, but I turned around and this one lady, she was so insistent. She was just so insistent that these streets were owned by the city. I said, if you look, you will see that all these apartments circle these streets that you're referring to. And I said, and I have a list if you would like to see it of all the streets in alphabetical order. So thank you, Meredith, for going the extra mile with me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. You did just the same or not more. I did.
Well, that's what we're here for, is to help each other out. But it was great, fun, collaborative work. I also was working with the Asheville City Parks and Rec, and I was able to get storyboards put up over at Weaver Park, W.T. Weaver, and they're of a book. And so the parents can read each story, each page with the child, and they're dealing with in the forest, and each page is dealing with a number. The first one is the little deer that lives in the forest. Number 2 are the 2 raccoons. And as you walk around the park, the storyboards are set up for the parents to incorporate. So I sent out a huge email to everybody in all the associations to please pass the word. And I had so many comments, grandparents said, oh, this is wonderful to know. We're going to do this weekend. And so it was really cool.
Sound good?
Thanks for staying so actively engaged, Wendy. Does anyone else want to share any neighborhood comments?
Wendy, you can't because you talk too long. You got to get ready to go. I can't let you talk more than that. You'll be here till.
That was the go.
We'll be here at 8:30.
I just told me, I didn't even say, I said last time about what's going on in East Valley, so.
Meredith also came out with Ken Putnam and Chris
Yeah.
to check out traffic issues that are pretty serious over Walton. And
I hope that you all get that done.
it is
I really
looking
do.
really, it's looking great. Ken is incredibly responsive, set up a survey fast, and we should have at least some progress within the next 2 weeks.
So you do know that if you have any neighborhood that has a traffic problem, if it's not part of DOT, Ken Putnam can work on helping you develop that traffic calming. And he's very good. He's very good at that. So he's working with something. I think with Shiloh. So
He's wonderful. I was impressed
He
that he
is.
came out. He reached out to me after we had our last committee meeting.
And
It
he
was
would-
also nice that just Meredith even came out. As the
Meredith just hops around
I know,
everywhere,
she's
doesn't she?
like,
And I'm just proud of her.
She's also in the neighborhood. which is
Yay.
awesome. She's mile from
South
me.
French, I wish you would reach out to,
We both got babies on the way.
What's that?
We both got babies on the way.
oh, you're pregnant?
I am not.
Oh.
I am not. I cannot claim that.
I'm just saying, I didn't
My
realize.
wife is.
Oh, okay.
And I know at a recent city council meeting, the LIDA MLK got its
That's what
funding.
we, at the last meeting.
Yeah,
It
so
was
that's, I know that's been a long,
Been
struggle
2
that you guys
years.
have been waiting for. And on tomorrow's agenda, there's the vote to designate Walton Street Pool as a historic landmark.
Mm.
So I expect a lot of people will be out
And
there
then
to
I
support
also
that.
talked with Asheville City Council as well as Asheville City Schools about the Jones Park playground.
Yes, that got approved too.
You got all that information that I
Yeah.
saw. And I've been busy.
No, we all busy. Yeah, but I like that with the Walton Street Park. I hope that it can be something that'll be a staple, because I remember swimming in it myself. Yeah, so I know it's not gonna be a pool, but at least you come up with some things that would possibly be, that could be used historically, that it would always be remembered as a place, because people don't realize that there were places that we could not go, places that we could not do things we could not do, and we were very limited. And so, Walton, that pool was a staple that was just really important to us, even as kids. I went to summer camp and we would go there for swimming, So yeah, I keep up that work. I think that sometimes we forget about the little places in that area of Southside and all of that has happened, the redevelopment of that area, because it was a thriving community. And it breaks my heart that I see that some of the things that have happened. But if you just keep engaging with all the people in the community, because it's a lot. I know a lot of people on Walton Street. If you get Tabernacle Church, Baptist Church,
Oh, yeah, I'm 2 houses down.
talk to the people over there,
I do.
and go around the corner to HB Ferguson. A lot of them people from my neighborhood, but engage in people that you wouldn't normally engage with, and I appreciate the fact that you are doing that,
Yeah,
because
Gene,
sometimes they forget about the people that are important, that have been there for a long period of
The
time.
people that are important, that have been there for a long time, are who started the movement to keep it as a historical designation, which is what was so important to me about it anyway. That the survey was resubmitted, more people had to say in it. And we spoke up without having a neighborhood alliance
Right.
or nonprofit. That neighborhood is not funded for that. There's not the income over there to start those. But for them to be able to come together without that and still push this through, it's been
So
just
let me
amazing.
tell you a little history, so you make sure you tell me.
Please.
You know where Oakland is and Hayes
Yeah.
Drive goes
Yeah.
down? Hayes Drive was named after Mr. Lacey Hayes, who was a teacher at Stevens Lee, went to South French Broad, and he was over, and he built those houses
He also worked
with
at
his
USAID.
students. The house that my sister lived in on Hayes Drive, he built that, him and his students, that he had over at Stevens Lee.
So Gene told us that story when we were in our meeting, even with Ken the other day.
I remember my sister had the first house over there on Hayes Drive, and he built that. It was amazing how he built all of those houses with those young people.
Yeah.
That's what we need to go back to, because there's a place for them too. So I say, I applaud you for that, for reaching out and doing what you need to do. So I applaud this committee for doing this. This has been, it's nice to have a retreat that,
Yeah,
we
y'all
can
all need
actually
to work
just-
on your favorite airplane skills.
No, mine, when I did it the second time, it went
It
over.
did, that was the
Because I listened to you instruct me.
I definitely had the best one.
Yeah, I won that. So if
Where are we time-wise?
we're quarter till,
Yeah, we're at a quarter till. We can go back to the brainstorming that we were doing.
I think we're gonna have to close out, aren't we?
Well, I think we'd scheduled till 8, but we can
Wait till-
also
wait
just
till 8?
table this until like our next meeting and pick it back up. We'll have a couple more people here.
Okay.
And we'll have the volunteer behind us.
Yes, yes.
Yes, that's what, I wanted to get that out the way so bad.
We do have the Festival of Neighborhoods.
But I
They
think we
talked
said-
about-
I marked that off. That
We
was supposed to
marked
be
that off.
Did you mark
continued
that
to
off?
next
marked that
meeting.
off. We'll
I
talk
print-
about that.
I printed it and showed up, so.
Yeah.
It's
But if
marked
you
down
want to,
online.
I don't know if you want to brainstorm anymore. Did you have something else other than the?
There was one more slide on
Let me see
here
that. Let's see
after,
that.
that's just where we pick out the ones that we really wanted to focus on after doing the whole brainstorming thing. But it's just a blank, it's just, we can,
The focus areas, I think that one of the most important thing was probably the taxes. One of the things that we really wanted to stay, I know things have already been put in place, but I think that might be something that we would want to just stay focused with as far as what's going on with the communities.
You're saying property taxes do
Yeah.
increase development?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the only way they go up is increased development other than we vote a bond issue.
right.
Yeah. What
And there
else?
are some programs I know that can help people who are facing some of that.
$500.
But yeah, it's not very
But you gotta remember that it's just not about the amount of money, but it's about, how much money you made. See,
It's a
so
cap.
that's what.
Right,
happened.
right, yeah, I think
That's
the
what-
cap is kind
It's
of
cap-
low
it's-
and
that's
it's
why we
not
were
that
saying
much.
The Reappraisal Commission wanted to increase that because maybe
Yeah,
that's something we need to know for people to get exemptions or reductions in taxes.
Well, that's a good point,
Mhm.
to put the reappraisal. I mean, because we all can say about the taxes, we can't do anything about it, we can't do anything about development really, unless we've got in place that we discussed
Right.
like you have. But we can recommend, programs or other raising limits on things to make them more equitable to more of the population.
Yeah, we can do that.
We also have health, like Eastern Valley's got our dental. We're having some snags with the dental because there's a low income requirement. So people like me that make more money, but not a whole lot of money, that don't want to spend a whole lot of money on teeth cleaning, can't go to this dental clinic because I make too much money. But I said, I'll give you money if you just do it cheaper than what my dentist is charging me.
like a
And so-
sliding scale
And so
system.
sliding scale, so we're working now for making it more equitable to people like me, a senior citizen, kind of sort of limited income, and I'm really, but not falling below that average.
Yeah.
So there's a health,
Yeah. Something that I also wanted to mention, kind of on the previous slide, I've been seeing a lot of community fridges. So you'll see like a fridge in a community where people bring produce or other things. There'd be a pantry, and people who need it can access it. I know Southside has a community fridge.
There's one on Charlotte Street.
Yeah, and a friend of mine had tried to implement one, I want to say sometime last year. She had a fridge, and the only problem was finding a property that was willing to plug it in and pay for the electricity. And that was like the hardest thing.
so they didn't have a community fridge or a community.
We have a
garden.
fridge there at the garden. They do.
Do they have a
We
fridge
have
at the
electricity
garden?
to
They have
our light
I
poles.
remember going there, but I don't
That
remember
would be
the
something
fridge.
the city.
Yeah, it's, if you go there and you see the place
It's
where it
definitely
looks
something
like
that
they,
It's
would
all
be
covered.
good to support.
it's encased inside, but they have that is a small fridge. But we don't use,
I know.
what we do is our produce, we don't have to refrigerate it.
No,
The
because
stuff that we
everybody takes
have.
it.
And so, but we do have access to, if we want to store stuff and bring it back out the next month, stuff like that. 'Cause we have a lot of help from farmers. So I think that'd be good to engage with communities on what we can do with farmers too. Because farmers have been a big help for Shiloh.
Mhm.
And then we send some stuff over, we send some stuff to Renee when if we
Mhm.
have.
I don't remember us getting it.
And, but that's how we help each other.
Mhm.
But I think that probably, let's focus on, so we said taxes.
I think we talked a lot about development too, and how to support our neighborhoods in responding to development.
So you know what, can we try to think about another wording? But they keep saying affordable housing. It's not affordable. We need some fair housing.
We need to change the AMI. I think they're changing that
You see what I'm
now.
saying?
Yeah.
That's a start, because it's not affordable. It might be affordable on paper to somebody, but it's not affordable to the people that live
No.
here. So it would be, what's fair housing? What's fair for a person that has middle income, but they can't afford, a
Right.
1 bedroom is $1,200. A 2 bedroom is up in the 15, and, you know, if you've got a family with 2 kids and, you know,
Yeah.
Our
Well, and
vouchers,
to
building a percentage of voucher, we can ask builders to increase their percentage of vouchers or affordable housing, and that's another thing that they did at Woodland. They increased.
well, they've done that at Maple Crest, but it's tricky.
It is
It's tricky. It's very
Because
tricky.
it's volunteer,
Utility.
you know, the developers don't have to do it
Utilities.
unless they exceed a density requirement. And then they're only restrained to a certain amount. So when we get into this, we've got ordinance issues and issues that go deep into,
But they do have a utility assistance, but the scale is so, you can only make, if you make more than 29,000 a year, you don't qualify.
The caps are super
The caps-
unreasonable.
And that was what reappraisal, that's what we were working with. Everything's not on the local level, but I think it's something that if we keep talking about and we keep saying it, that it may be something, somebody will sooner hear it, that can make some changes. So I think that would be fair to put in there. That's okay, but I think I would make it more urgent than just to umbrella it under tax assistance.
Yeah.
Make it maybe in housing and a utility assistance. But it's a lot of things going on, because I have United Healthcare as a supplement for my social, you know, for what I get from Medicare. And they told me they're going up to giving us $300 and some a month in January. And you can use it for your utility. So it's things going on. I'm serious. You can use it for that, whatever. So, but you can use it for food. They even got with Publix. So I think maybe put education as a component too, because it's out there, but we may not know it.
Nobody knows.
Right.
Right. And so if we can get the educational component out there,
on so much development with simplicity, with reparations and the knowledge gaining through reparations, it can come back to us at NAC so that we know that we're talking the same language, so that we can approach the city if necessary on both ends.
so the reparations is very tricky,
Yeah, I
because a
know.
lot of things that
I know,
we're
I
not
talked to
ready
Glenda on
until
it too.
until we get it to the city and the county, we cannot really expound on it. So when you see it, it's because it's already gone out to them. So what I can do is, I can take your suggestions if you have questions, and we can work that, I can work that way, or if it's something I know is already out there, we can kind of maybe talk about it.
And then put it in our NAC resilience, because we're about neighborhood resilience.
It was briefly mentioned food deserts. I don't think that should be like just glossed over.
Well, see, and then the thing about food deserts is, it's got to be a radius of so far away for people to be able to get to the store.
Right.
You're probably in a food desert.
I think technically I still am.
I think that over
Even though
there
they have
in that,
greens and, you know, they're.
but that's, you don't have a local place where
No, we
people
don't
can
have,
actually
like,
go,
no,
like
you gotta
an
go all the way
Ingles
south.
or a store like that, where people would, right there in your neighborhood. You got Greens Mini Market, but I mean, you know, and then on down the street, you might have some things, but you don't really have.
I've got the co-op,
Mhm.
or I've got Ingles on top. Are honestly like our options, and that's not fair for people that don't have cars.
Right.
And an unreliable bus system.
And then you get on the bus, if you got your groceries, that's hard getting back on and off the bus, a lot of groceries, so yeah.
I hate to say it, but you can't rely on the schedule right now.
Kim has her hand up.
Does this group have any interest in hearing about the climate justice initiative and how it relates to neighborhoods in this?
So we did talk about that a little bit with the ARPA project and the emergency operations plan, because those three things staff is tied
Yeah, it's
together.
Landslide, pollution, wildfire, extreme heat, food access, community preparedness. it seems like, especially with stormwater and the relation to tree canopy and recommendations this group has made in the past, that maybe a sustainability presentation on what vulnerability indexes are for neighborhoods might be helpful.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in hearing
Yeah, I was
about
thinking
that.
about, yeah, like a presentation from Stacy or,
Like what are the neighborhoods with the highest vulnerability index for food deserts, for stormwater mitigation, for development, gentrification, things like that?
So I can say in that vein, the ARPA Inclusive and Accessible Government Project and the Community Space Upfit, the criteria, and that is a priority that you all definitely want to focus on. We're working with sustainability to make sure that we're capturing use the climate justice map and having that to be a way to introduce that conversation, even if there's the focus towards plastic bags, that whole idea. Well, how can we continue that with other projects that are happening? And so that could be a connection for you all. That would be the environmental scan, the background information for identifying places where people are already gathering and may be good candidates for the community space upfit piece of it.
The reason I'm thinking about that is if legacy neighborhoods are being included in that conversation, but if y'all represent the neighborhoods that are being discussed, we might need to make sure that y'all have that input and can do outreach in your different areas. Because we're by zip code.
This type of, yeah.
That be under our resilience or the ARPA?
I mean, that's what I was saying earlier, is there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, I mean,
They are,
Yeah,
it's real hard to
we've
separate
chosen
them.
to take ARPA and wait for that because of that involving the person the city's hiring to
No,
give
that's
us
the
a-
emergency preparedness program.
But through the ARPA, they're all lumped together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're lumped in.
Well, they're separate, but there are connections. That was that conversation about taking that step back and rather than doing all these disparate projects, finding where there are interconnections between them, and that being a great place if NAC wants to plug in at that level. So we don't exhaust the community with 3 different engagements. We really help them see that having a place for emergency, having a resilience hub in a neighborhood can also deal with climate justice hazards, can also help people have access to decision-making, and can also address, did I ever say climate hazards? Sorry.
Food disparities.
Food, yes, all of those things can be part of the conversation, can be reflected in the emergency operations plan. That was the second one, about the emergency operations plan. That's happening on that.
Should we put that like under resilience, because that is pretty much, I mean,
yeah.
instead of putting it in 2 different categories, that we've got everything listed when we're making a list and we eventually get there. All of the resilience.
I think food security is a massive thing.
I totally
Under
agree.
resilience.
Yeah.
Shows
Okay.
everything.
When they finish their separate conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're into it. They're into
I don't know what it
We're
is.
working-
It's almost 8 o'clock. I'm ready to go home. Huh?
I think
Did-
that
Did you hear what I said?
No, I'm sorry. Please say that again.
I'm just saying we should probably put it all under the category of resilience. Because if we're gonna have 2 different categories of crossover, we're gonna be out forever trying to, what goes into this category and what goes into the other category. If we put it all under neighborhood resilience, then we can talk about it maybe in categories under resilience.
Right,
That
right.
makes
The,
sense.
Yep.
So I don't have to say that it's over here and then it's some of it's over here.
yeah, I think the ARPA project and upfitting like the community spaces will definitely help us with like responding to development and encouraging building of
gosh.
neighborhood associations and then.
Which brings to Ken's, I mean, we've got so much data on Heat Island. I mean, I've got it from the Urban Forestry Commission data on the neighborhoods that are the most impacted by Heat Island, which neighborhoods have the less tree canopy. I mean, and I know Stacy's got their own set of data as well.
and that impacts your utilities.
Mhm.
So if utilities is on here, and we know that's impacted by heat islands, and that's impacted by the tree canopy, then that, I mean, it just seems like it would fit into
Right,
this bucket.
right. So that way
There's
we can,
also issues of social determinants of health, so as you have recommendations from the Community Reparations Commission, you may find some of them fitting underneath
Mhm.
this part of research.
And that's what we were saying. We didn't want to get too far out where we were trying to invent stuff that was already coming into place. So these were just things that we wanted to be keen on to say, this is what our concerns are, and this is what we're thinking about, because we already know that things have already begun to start, that we just, and that's the educational piece that we're talking about, that some people may know, but everybody does not know. And so we need to make sure we get hold to that educational piece, so everybody be on the same page. So yeah, that was what our conversation was basically focused on as we were trying to prioritize, what would we say that we would want to focus on for next year, along with what's already being done, like the emergency preparedness and, things that are happening. What can we kind of send a recommendation for as we see these things that are gonna be happening? Because everything is open. Everything that we know is open. It's just, you got to know where to go look. They're not gonna slide it to your door.
No, they
But
don't.
you would have to, be, and that's what we do. We look at these things.
Well, we covered our whole agenda, you guys. We did it.
We did it.
We did it.
So can I adjourn this meeting?
Yes.
This meeting is.
Please do.
Now I can go home and watch The Voice.
I gotta catch up on House of the Dragon season finale last night. No spoilers.
Yeah, and their guidance, and their guidance.